What's going on, guys? Afflicted here. We are back again with another video. This time we have something a little different. Wanted to actually cover a Path of Exile build that I've been playing recently. Wanted to give some feedback, some thoughts, recommendations, suggestions moving forward, and overall just first impressions of my league starter of this build. This is patch 3.14, so this is the Ultimatum League, the long-awaited changes, everything that's been introduced, the new skill gems, all the different patch notes that came through. The game looks a lot different than it initially did. So, I wanted to cover the build that I just started to league start with, my initial thoughts, and specifically cover my response to SirGog. He is a YouTuber, Twitch streamer, one of my favorite content creators. He was theory crafting this build when it was first released, and this is his Reap Elementalist. So, yeah, just wanted to cover my experience with the build, kind of respond to his suggestions, and just kind of give my thoughts. So, just quick details with the build. I followed everything that SirGog's suggested in his initial videos, so if you haven't seen them yet, I will link those in the description so you can take a look at his videos, his theory crafts, his initial thoughts, things that he felt about the build, what would be strong, different outlines, ways to proceed with the build, the best way to approach it moving forward. So I started with Reap, like most people when the skill was released. It just looks so awesome. I just absolutely had to find a build to use the skill. It just looks so cool. I stumbled across SirGog's YouTube channel. Found he was kind of the first one to start theory crafting with the build. And the idea he put forward was to use Reap in combination with the Elementalist Ascendancy to kind of scale all aspects of Reap, so the initial hit and the damage over time, with the default damage, just the overall scaling that golems give you. So, I started with Reap. I played with Reap all the way through Blood Aqueducts, and once I hit Blood Aqueducts, the skill was just feeling really clunky. The damage was fine, don't get me wrong, there was no issues there, but the real problem is with the mechanics of the skill. So when you swing with Reap, you're swinging a scythe, essentially. So there's a big dead zone, or what I perceive to be a dead zone at least. When you use the skill, there is a non-zero amount of dead zone pretty much near the hilt. So if you picture a scythe where the hilt would be when you're swinging this big scythe directly in front of you, there's a pretty large dead zone there where you're not going to hit any of the monsters that are directly in front of you. Nor are you going to hit anything behind you, obviously, and there's a pretty big gap to the left and right of you. So you're leaving a lot of screen untouched, and with a game like Path of Exile, fast-paced, extremely high damage situations where you absolutely have to clear entire packs of mobs instantly, especially during these high level ultimatums that scale infinitely. It just wasn't doing the trick. So what I ended up doing was I switched from Reap to Exsanguinate at Blood Aqueducts, and I have not looked back. So I want to go ahead and cover my current build, thoughts moving forward, and what I would suggest. So initially, I debated between the Scion build that's going around. So I think that Zizaran has been running this in his recent videos, so he kind of league started with the Exsanguinate Spellslinger, the Scion. That seems awesome. I think that build is a lot more durable with the max block, Necromancer, and Ascendancy. The block, the life on block, shields, things like that. Definitely seems a lot more durable, but my experience is that our build with the double cold iron points, and the scaling that golems bring in all aspects, whether it be your lightning golem with cast speed, the flame golems, things like that, all these things scaling off of golem gem levels. It just seems as if the damage is so much higher when it comes to the Elementalist version. So, Decided on Elementalist version. I think I made the right decision. If I were playing hardcore, I absolutely would not recommend this, and I would definitely recommend the Scion version of the build. Use that shield, get that increased block from the Necromancer Ascendancy. So, I want to cover my gear real quick before I jump into a T14 map, just to kind of show quick display of what the build can do. So, important parts of the build that I want to cover real quick. So you have your helmet. Most important thing here is you can gain +2. You can gain between +1 and 3 level of socketed minion gems. So what I went ahead and did was I socketed my most important golems here. So Lightning Golem for increased cast speed. This is paramount. Exsanguinate does have quite a long cast time, baseline, and if you stand there casting it that slow during ultimatums, you will die. Very important for you to get increased cast speed, and Summon Lightning Golem is a great way to do that. Flame Golem, that's pretty self-explanatory. We're talking insane damage boost here. Must have. Okay, and Summon Chaos Golem, this is one of our big defensive layers, which is increased physical damage reduction. So all of those attached to a minion life support. All of these get an extra 2 level of socketed minion gems. And yes, I must brag about my 40% Exsanguinate damage enchantment that I got from my first Uber Lab run. So I definitely can't say never lucky, because that was definitely lucky. So moving on, we have probably the most important part of the build, which is the double Cold Iron points. +3 to level of all physical skill gems. So that doubles. So we're looking at a +6 physical spell skill gems. So that includes our Exsanguinate, that includes our Corrupting Fever, and that also includes our, let me see where it is here, Stone Golem. So that's going to give insanely increased life regen, along with physical damage, which is exactly what we want. So Cold Iron Point is a must-have. This is going to be absolute best in slot until you can craft the absolute in-game wand. Which we're talking, you know, multiple EX there. So Cold Iron Point is going to carry you through the entire game. Next we have the gloves. This is a new addition. We have the Apothecary base, which is perfect for the build. Socketed gems deal 30% more damage over time. That's definitely what you want to get in there for the influence. 18% increased damage over time from the Apothecary base. So that's going to work on our Exsanguinate, and that's more importantly, that's going to work on our Corrupting Fever, which is the silent MVP for the build. It absolutely carries our single target damage, and the amount of damage over time that you do from Corrupting Fever and Exsanguinate is massive. So you're going to clear entire screens with Exsanguinate, but Corrupting Fever is where you get your single target damage, and that is the big difference of the build. Moving on, we have our necklace. So Primordial Chain, this is kind of one of those first big upgrades that I would suggest and that I've gotten myself. So +3 to the maximum number of summon golems. That scales every aspect of what we're already doing, so that's insane. Obviously, you definitely want to get this as soon as you possibly can. With our Elementalist and Liege of the Primordial, the amount of percentage effective buffs and percentage damage that we're gaining from this is absolutely crazy. So yeah, Primordial Chain, definitely the first upgrade past Cold Iron Point that I would recommend. Other considerations, we're looking at Anima Stone, and then getting the other 2 Primordial Gems to get another 2 Summon Golems. Each extra golem you have is just going to scale your damage, your survivability, and your cast speed exponentially. So those are all things to look out for. Past that, we're just looking at basic rares, life, resistances, nothing fancy there. So that's it for the gear. As far as the skill tree, pretty straightforward. I decided to go with Shaper of Storms for the extra shock. I plan to get an Impulsa when I can. I've just watched SirGog's recent video, and I'm a big believer in Impulsa. I will be picking that up as soon as I can, and we'll see exactly what that does to the build, whether it increases the damage or if it's not worth the upgrade. And I ended up going with Bastion of Elements just to get another defensive layer there. And so I skipped over Shaper of Winter, went with the Bastion of the Elements. Damage is not going to be the issue on this current setup. I will promise you that. Your damage is not the problem. You dying in one hit to a T16 juice map boss is the problem. So anything you can do to increase defenses, you're definitely going to want to take that. One thing I've even considered is dropping a cold iron point and going with a shield at some point, but I don't think we're quite there. Plus the fact that I'm playing on softcore, it's much less of a consideration. So anyway, that's the current build, guys. Nothing fancy here in the skill tree. The only thing I would say is the cluster node, large cluster jewel, going with a medium, and then 2 smalls. The big thing here is ensuring that you get primordial bond on your large cluster jewel. You can roll that yourself. I believe you need an item level, I want to say 69 or above. Large cluster jewel, definitely check PoEDB for that. But primordial jewel obviously is insane. It's doing everything that we want to be doing. It's essentially another ascendancy point. So primordial bond, absolutely insane. Make sure that you get that. Past that, we're just looking at survivability. Life gain on kill is very important with this build. Brush with Death is a great node to take on your small cluster jewels, so it's one thing to look out for there. And of course, ensuring that you get spiritual aid for increases in minion damage also apply to you, so all these extra passives will also apply to you on your cluster jewels. Okay, I've rambled long enough. I'm going to jump into a map, and I will be back, guys, with my final thoughts and suggestions moving forward. Alright guys, we are back here for our little map test run I wanted to show real quick. This is a T14, 20 quality with a sacrifice fragment, so pretty decent quantity here. Nothing too crazy, nothing mega juice, just standard T14 map. Pretty quick run, and I wanted to discuss real quick. And just so you're aware, I kind of cut out the very beginning because I had a random death as soon as I zoned in due to lag. The textures were not loaded, so yeah, I know we've all experienced that recently, but that's another video. So one thing I wanted to kind of point out here is the extreme clear speed. You are one-shotting every single minion in the game. If it's not a boss, you will be killing it instantly with Exsanguinate. If it is a pretty juiced rare, then it will die shortly after with the Corrupting Fever dot. So yeah, pretty insane damage there, and I wanted to discuss the gem links that I'm using to get us there. First of all, our 6-link chest, we have Exsanguinate, Chain Support. This is very important for the clear. That's going to be your biggest link, so if you're leveling up in the axe, you want Chain Support as soon as you can. Unleash Support helps us get our max stacks of Corrupting Fever as soon as we can. Efficacy, a lot of damage there. Brutality support, and I believe our last link is Controlled Destruction. So yeah, we don't need any crits with the build. We are just strictly looking to deal as much damage as possible on the initial hit and the corresponding damage over time. And we're going to jump into an ultimatum in just a second. Alright, welcome back guys. We are here with that little ultimatum from that same map, so just to give you an idea of what that looks like for the League mechanic. We just discussed the 6-link on our chest for Exsanguinate. For the 4-link Corrupting Fever on our gloves, we are using Corrupting Fever, Swift Affliction, Brutality, and Efficacy for the maximum damage over time. Insane damage there, definitely the links that you want to have. We're using a very standard Flame Dash, Second Wind, Arcane Surge setup. We have our basic Golem gems that we discussed earlier. The auras that we're using are Malevolence. Increased damage over time and skill effect duration is exactly what we want to have. Vitality, increased regen to help prop up the life cost of Exsanguinate. Herald of Purity for the corpse explosion effect until we get Impulsa. Afterwards, we will be switching back to Flesh and Stone with Maim support. That may be better right off the rip, but yeah, I've been using Herald of Purity due to SirGog's suggestion, but I could definitely see it going both ways, and we managed to sneak in a War Banner aura there as well. And finally, we are using Stormbrand to stack a Corrupting Fever as soon as possible. I will be including the POB in the video description. Future upgrades, we will be looking at Impulsa, Animal Stone, and Primordial Eminence to boost up the minion life regen during ultimatums. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know any comments or concerns you have, and I'll be happy to speak to them. Thanks again.